All right, kiddos, you have made it to your last shading exercise. So we should have at this point completed a sphere, a cylinder, a cone, and now we're going to do a cube. So I'm going to go ahead and turn to a fresh sheet of paper. If you were working in a notebook like this, I would advise against drawing on top of here. So I'm going to open this up and flip this so that it's like this. You see some nice scribbles from my son in the background there. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So I am going to turn my paper this way, and I'm going to grab my supplies. So you already saw I'm going to have a tissue, eraser, pencil sharpener as needed, and I'm also going to be using a ruler for this. So to get started, we're going to set up our cube, and we're going to be using something called 2-point perspective, which we may discuss a little bit more in depth later on this year. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to set something up called a horizon line across the top. Now, if you don't have a ruler, it's not a big deal. Anything with a straight edge, anything that helps you draw a straight line could be used in its place. So I'm just going to draw a very light line across the top, and then I'm going to mark something called vanishing points. So here and here, because in 2-point perspective we have 2 vanishing points. And then what I'm going to do is I am going to draw a vertical line in about the center of my paper below the horizon line. So let's say right about here. Okay, then from here, I'm going to connect from the bottom of the line up to the vanishing point very lightly, because I'm not going to keep all of that. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'm going to do the same thing from the top. And then I'm going to put the sides in. So this will make the sides of my cube. So I don't want it too skinny. I'm going to draw a line that's parallel. So that means these 2 lines need to be going both straight up and down. Same thing on the other side, another parallel line. So again, my ruler straight up and down. It's not slanted like this. I see a lot of kids do lines that look like this. That is not going to give you a nice cube, so please don't do that. Keep your ruler straight up and down, and you're going to pop that in there, okay? I'm just going to erase this because I'm not going to be using it. From there, I am going to connect from the intersection of these lines over to the vanishing point on the opposite side. Don't forget, you can pause, rewind, slow me down, whatever you need to do in order to catch all of this. So now I'm coming up to the point here where these 2 lines are intersecting, and I'm going to line my ruler up with my vanishing point. So I'm going from here to this vanishing point. Okay, that's going to give me a nice cube drawn very accurately using 2-point perspective. I'm just going to go ahead and erase all these extra lines that I don't need. And then I'm just going to start shading. All right. So let's talk about where my light source is going to be for this drawing. For this drawing, my light source is actually going to come a little bit from the top left-hand side of my paper. So imagine it's coming from right up there, which means that this is going to be pretty light up here. Our darkest side, of course, is going to be our side facing away from our light source. So we already know that this is going to be our 5s and our 4s. This would be our 3s and 2s, or our 3, and this would be a 2. And so when I'm making that reference, I'm referring to those values on your grayscale. So let's go ahead and get started. I am going to move from, I'm right-handed, so I'm going to move from this side over so that I'm not smearing when I move that direction. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm working in one direction. And I'm starting pretty lightly because I can always build it up darker if I need to. I'm trying to be consistent in the direction I'm moving as well as the amount of pressure I'm putting. So some of the things I've seen students having a hard time with this week as we've been working on these is just keeping that value consistent the whole way throughout. So one way you can do that is really by keeping your hand in the same place for the most part, and then avoiding going over one particular area more than once. And again, I'm just moving in the same direction as I'm shading. So all my lines are moving up and down or vertically. And then I am going to darken this corner up just a little bit more, because I imagined that if the light source was coming from here, that it would be hitting maybe a little bit on this side, and at this corner it would get a little bit darker. So okay, so now we're going to go ahead and start moving into this side, and I am going to use my ruler for this for a second, just to kind of block off this area. I'm going to move my hand down my pencil. The only place you're going to maybe see me turn my pencil a little bit and go the opposite direction is just right here along the very bottom edge, and I try to make that as small as possible when I do that. And slow down as you're in that area, because when you're pressing and getting a lot of pressure on there and leaving a dark mark, it gets harder to erase. So I didn't worry too much about it over here. This should erase pretty easily because it's not super dark. But as I begin to make darker values, I want to be more careful with how fast I'm moving, because I don't want to make the paper sloppy by not being able to erase values that I don't actually want in certain areas. In here. I'm just going to continue to build up this value. I may use it for this one too. So if you've still got your vanishing point in place, you can use that to help you in. And again, you can use the ruler to the vanishing point. I'm just gonna go ahead and with my tissue and start blending this. Just a side note on this, I know that some of you are beginning to realize this as you're working, because we've talked about it in class, is that when you are blending with the tissue, it does pick up a lot of the graphite, a lot of the pigment you've put down. So you really do need to go back in once you've blended this out and really layer that dark value on again. It's nice because when you blend this way, you know, it pulls out a lot of the white if you don't want the white value of the paper shining through, but it does make more work for you because you've got to go back in and lay on some of those darker values again, some of those details that you don't want to lose. Okay. Also, I would not advise you to use your eraser just yet to take out all of that extra pigment that got smeared around. You're going to do that at the very end. So I'm going to pause here for a second while I sharpen my pencil. And get right back to it. And honestly, in my opinion, the cube is actually the easiest. So I saved the easiest for you to the end. Probably should have started with the cube. I can change that up for future classes, but if you've mastered the cylinder, the cone, and the sphere, I think the cube is going to seem pretty easy. We'll see if we can make it a little bit more interesting than just having, you know, 3 basic values. It's kind of boring. We'll see if we can make it look a little more interesting. So I'm like debating. Part of me wants to go in with my finger. I always used to really love to just blend with my hands. So why not? It's not the end of the world. We've talked about why you might want to avoid it. It's not the end of the world if you do it. I don't think we're going to be putting these in any archival systems or anything like that. Okay, I think that side's pretty well blended. I'm gonna go ahead and darken this side of the cube up a little bit more. So I'm just pulling straight down from that line. You can also go straight up with the same amount of pressure. And then I'm going to be able to space my lines out a little bit more, as well as lighten my pressure up on that somewhat. Okay. And because my finger already had quite a bit of pencil on it or graphite on it, it's not picking up as much of the color as if I had gone in with my tissue. Okay, so now we're gonna do the top. I'm gonna clean the top up just ever so slightly. So I'm gonna line this up with my vanishing point. I'm just gonna take my eraser, run it along the edge there. So again, I lined my ruler up with my vanishing point as I did that. And then I avoided brushing my hand over it, which is why you hear me blowing on the pen, the eraser. You can also take a clean finger or tissue and brush that off. Okay, so I think if I leave this really stark white, it's gonna look a little funky. So I think what we'll do is we'll add some more shading in here, but we're going to do it very, very lightly. So my hand's going to be really at the end of this. Okay. I'm using my tissue because I do want to pick up a little bit of that. Darken this edge up just a touch because again it's further away from the light source, so I'm gonna imagine that it might be a little bit darker. But again, I'm holding my pencil all the way on the end so that I can't put too much pressure there. Right at that edge, we're gonna darken that up just a touch. Okay. So I'm not sure I'm going to do too much more to the top here. I'm just, like I said, going to try and make it a little bit more interesting here and there by popping in a few darker values and some lines. And then we can do the same thing down here, just putting some, maybe some little areas of interest in there. Maybe making it look a little bit more like a block of wood. Just something to make it a little more interesting. It's pretty boring, but it's a cube. Okay. I'm using my ruler in this because it's such a geometric drawing. If you have something called an ebony pencil, you could use that to put in some of these really dark lines. I can also use a little bit of reductive drawing in areas. So again, reductive meaning we're lifting out some of the pigment. I'm really not putting a lot of pressure. Just kind of dragging that in some spaces. And we can clean that off on a scrap paper. So what you see is like when something's one solid value throughout, it gets a little bit boring, which is why I'm just ever so slightly just gliding the eraser throughout various bits of my drawing to make a greater variation of value or tone. So I'm not pressing hard because the goal is not to completely erase everything, right? As I don't want a huge fat eraser mark, but I do want to add just a little more interest, as I've said before. Okay, and let's go ahead and clean this up. Oh, you know what we almost forgot? Which is super important. Very silly of me. A cast shadow. Durr. Okay, so for our cast shadow, we're gonna start by bringing this out this direction. I'm gonna kind of do this at an angle. So what I mean by that is that it's gonna be kind of going like this. Okay. So of course the cast shadow will be darkest where the object and the shadow, the cast shadow, are meeting. If you need to turn your paper while you're working, go for it. It always feels a little awkward to me when I'm making videos and I don't turn my paper. But I try to avoid it just so that you guys can see what I'm doing without me turning the paper around too much. Alright, let's start blending this out with my tissue. And if I want to soften up those lines, I can do a circle to really blend them out. So I just went on a pretty circular motion there to blend those out a little bit more. Okay, got that shadow happening, and now I think I'm just going to go ahead and begin to clean this up. You could, I suppose, put a cast shadow in, maybe coming from the other side too, but I'm going to leave it at this for now. So let's bring my ruler in here. Really clean that edge up. Same thing here, holding that ruler in place. Here as well. making sure I'm going to erase this vanishing point so that if you were to look back at your work, you wouldn't get it confused with your light source, even though you should know better. Your light source is right here. Can you imagine? Little sun. Okay, and this side. A little hard. Get in there. Yeah, I did clean that up. Pretty straight line there. Sometimes with certain objects, you get a pretty defined cast shadow. Sometimes not so much. But I feel like there would be one more with this. Or at least I'm pretending there is. I'm gonna put a ruler under here. And there you have it, a cube. I probably should not have run my hand over top of it. Not the best idea, but it can be really hard not to do that. My tissue, I'll be a little more careful. All right, there you go. There's a cube. Looks kind of like maybe it's cut from wood or something. So that's why I added in just those little details. It was kind of boring otherwise. But this is the general concept. You're gonna have fewer values with this just because of the way the light's hitting. Alrighty, I can't wait to see how all of your cubes turn out, and then to see how you take and apply what you've learned from shading basic shapes to shading something like an apple or a pear or something like that, using your values and understanding how to represent those. Okay, so have at it. I can't wait to see how they look, and I'll see you in class. Adios.